Okay, so everybody's at least on Office 2007. So if you're at least on Office 2007, you're going to have this menu pane to the right-hand side. At the very top of the menu pane, you have Session Options. The icon directly to the left below it, when you bring your cursor over top of it, will read Set Slide as a Demographic. So I'm just going to click that one time. Now that I click this icon one time, I've designated to the software that I'm using this question to track demographics. This is very important. This is how I make a slide on demographic. Now, the whole point of it, like I said, is we're going to be able to generate reports to see how the freshmen and sophomores answered every single question. So give me an opportunity here to run this on simulated data, to separate my groups, and then I'll show you where these demographic reports are located. Okay, so the presentation is done. Remember, when the presentation is done, save the results through Save Session. And now we're going to come over here to Reports. Now, when we're in the Report screen, since we did set at least one slide as a demographic, and/or we set up demographics within our participant list, I have the option of generating one or both of these demographic reports. One is awesome, one is just okay. This one's good, graphical comparison. So I'm going to go ahead and generate this one. So I'm just going to go down there, click Generate Reports, and now I'm going to be able to see how my freshmen and sophomores have answered every single question in this presentation. So here we are. How familiar are you with Turning Point Part 1? I can see how the freshmen answered it, and I can also see how the sophomores answered it. Keep this in mind. This first question, how familiar are you with Turning Point? I asked this in the beginning of my presentation. The demographic question was actually the last one, but it doesn't matter. The software is still able to break down those groups according to how they answered previous questions. They're still able to track that information because they're still going to be using the same response card. So the software knows how those individuals answered every single question. And I'm going to be able to see this for the entire presentation, every single question that has been asked. So these are your demographic reports right here. Remember, in order to generate these demographic reports, you must either set up demographics within your participant list, and when you use that participant list with any presentation, you can generate a demographic report, or set a slide up in your presentation as a demographic by clicking on the Session Options, Mark Slide as a Demographic Slide. Are there any questions at all on what's required to generate a demographic report?
No.
Okay. Now, I do want to go ahead and show one more thing in terms of tracking demographical information, and this is something you can do during your presentation to show the outcome of one demographic question linked to a regular Turning Point question to show them the final outcome. So what I want to do is go ahead and just reset this session, because I'm going to ask this question again, what grade are you in? So what we're going to do is link a Turning Point demographic question to a regular Turning Point question, just a normal chart slide that I would put in. Okay, so here's my demographic question, what grade are you in? And let me put in a slide right next to it, and maybe I'll put in, what is your favorite subject? All right, now there's absolutely nothing demographic about it because I don't want it to be a tracking question. But I do want to go ahead and link my demographic to this one. Now to do this, I'm going to come up here to my Insert Slide tab. And from Insert Slide, I'm going to go down to the third option from the bottom, which is Demographic Comparison. When I click on this, it's simply going to ask me for my demographic slide. So in this case, my demographic is number 24. And the slide that I want to go ahead and link it to is number 25. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be back-to-back like mine, but as soon as you press OK, it's going to go ahead and build in the chart slide right after. Now, you might be looking at this whole process and even at the chart slide and think to yourself, this looks strangely similar to what he showed right in the beginning of the presentation, which was comparative links. Yes, it looks the same, and you actually kind of set it up the same way. You're linking together two slides. But remember, the comparative links link together a pre- and post-analysis question. Both those questions were the same, and it showed the final outcome. This, we're linking together a demographic question to a regular question to show us the final outcome. Now, do notice at the bottom here we have our legend, which represents our demographic groups, and the question that we linked it to is located up on top. So you're going to go ahead and link together two slides if you want to show the students the outcome during the presentation. So if they want to see it during the presentation, this is something that we can show. So the demographic question was just asked. This is a slide that we linked it to. And of course, this is the final outcome right here. So I can see a breakdown of how the freshmen and sophomores have answered this question. Any questions at all in terms of setting up this demographic comparison slide? All right. Now, guys, I'm going to go ahead and change gears a little bit in terms of the last topic that we covered. And I'm going to talk about the TurningPoint show bar. The TurningPoint show bar is what appears in the upper right-hand corner on the slide when you arrive on one of those TurningPoint slides. So what I'm going to do right now is get back into presentation mode. So when I'm in presentation mode, you can see that I have all of these icons that are located up here in the upper right-hand corner. And some of them I can access when polling is open, some when it's closed, some of them either or. And I'm going to work from left to right to show you each one of these icons. Going left to right, the first one that I have here is hide/show the TurningPoint show bar. So if I either hit the F9 or left click of the mouse, it makes that show bar disappear. And then the F9 key will make it reappear. So if that show bar is blocking out perhaps your question, now we can go ahead and bring the question to the forefront by making that thing disappear. The icon right next to it is toggle between percents and counts. So right now my charts are being displayed as whole numbers. If I want to see it as percentages, if I click that, it changes it over. Or the default is percentages, so when you guys click on it, it's going to change it over to the whole numbers. Third icon that we have is something called data slicing. Now the data slicing is a fantastic tool to be able to break down the current question that's on the screen by how our students have answered previous questions. Let me show you what I mean. So if I click on data slicing, notice that it's showing every single question I've asked in the presentation. Now since I reset, I only have 2 questions in here. Otherwise, I would have every single one of them. But I can basically open up question data, select a certain answer choice, and then when I come down and click the Select tab, the chart now being displayed is sliced by how all the sophomores answered it. It's only showing one group. So for the sophomores, 8 for math, 8 for science, 7 for history. But if I click on this again, and this time I select freshmen, click the Select tab, now this chart is being represented how all the freshmen answered it. Now even though I'm breaking this down by how my students answered that demographic question, which was, what grade are you in? This will slice it by any question data. So you don't necessarily have to ask a demographic during the presentation to use data slicing. I might have had something earlier in there that asked, how was your day? And I can go ahead and say, everyone who's having a bad day, what is their favorite subject? This is something that I can access at any time during the presentation when polling is shut down. This is data slicing. How are we doing so far? Any questions on any of these icons yet?
Yeah.
All right, now the icon right next to it reads Show Original Chart. It's just going to bring up the original way the students answered the question. Probably the most popular option on here is the one that I really want you to know about, and this is the Repoll the Current Question. So let's say you accidentally shut down polling a little bit too soon during your presentation, and you need to open it up a second time. Well, if you click on this Repoll icon, polling now opens up. And at this time, the students can go ahead and resubmit their response. Once we get all those student responses, we're going to shut down the polling and, of course, get completely different results. Now, it's important to note that when you repoll, this is actually treating it as a completely separate question. So if I'm a student in this class, even though I might have answered it the first time, I'm still going to need to resubmit my response. Because when I generate the reports, I'm going to be able to see the outcome of this question listed 2 separate times. So repolling the current question, we'll treat it as a completely separate question. Now, it doesn't create a completely separate slide. It's still just one slide. But when you generate the reports, you're going to see the outcome of the 2 questions that were asked. The next 2 icons, I need to open up polling to show you. And the first one is a response grid, and the other one is a non-response grid. Now, if you were using a participant list and you clicked on this, I am not. It says anonymous. But if I had a list, I'd have a similar box down here, and I'd have each student being represented in their own little box. Now, it's going to be a little bit larger than this to show each student. But as each student answers the question, the box correlating with their name is going to light up. This is going to be your visual indicator that student has indeed answered the question. So only the students who have not yet answered will have boxes that are not yet lit up. And the icon right next to it is Show Non-Response Grid. Show Non-Response Grid will do just the opposite. It's going to start out with all the students in there, and as the students answer the question, their name will disappear, so only the students who have not yet answered will still remain in that box.